Hello and welcome to day 39. I'm Tomlin's Nyback, and this is 365 days towards racial change. We're talking about issues of blackness in America, white power, entitlements, things like that, black vulnerability. Today's subject, black as an underclass, especially hot issue with Dr. Claude Anderson. He's the individual, the man who's been very instrumental at awakening my mind and helping me understand my position in America. First, being black, part of being a man and being in America. Those things all carry some weight, and I'm finding as I understand his message and my position better, then I feel like I'm coming into a position of power. I'm being empowered by the knowledge that I'm receiving and articulating to you. Thanks for hanging out with me. On that note of Dr. Claude Anderson, we're informed by him. Look at his videos. He's easy to find. He's still touring the country, still speaking. I read 3 of his great works. He's got a handful of books out there. You can also find him through PowerNomics.com, the Heritage Institute. Look up those things, and you get plenty of information that I'm sure you'll find interesting for Black Americans. First book I read was A Black History Reader. If you have this text and are following along, I encourage you to get these books. We're going to be looking at question number 2 today. Let me just set that aside real quick. Also, another work of Dr. Anderson's is Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice, and his national plan to empower Black America, PowerNomics.com. And just so you know, it's not all dreary racism and things like that. We take a fictional look at dreary racism and all that by Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin, and that's a fictional account. And it's interesting. It just so happens that as this video series moves along through this year, the issue of blackface is really coming to the forefront in the media. Interesting timing. I don't know if they're spying on me, if I'm making any waves. I doubt it. I have a very small set of subscribers. Oh, also, subscribe to the link, please, and give me thumbs up if you're a YouTube, if you have a YouTube account. That'd be great. I guess I'm not interested in numbers and things like that. This is more my personal catharsis here. Hashtag us too. You'll find that community as well. Google it. I know it comes up when you put it in your Facebook search engine. Hashtag USTOO. There's also a black, kind of a social website called Black Enough. There's plenty of stuff like that. It's the internet. This is instant information age, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of links to issues. I bet you that, they can't build servers fast enough. Fortunately, everything's electronic and digitized, so the space is almost infinite. That for storage of this kind of stuff. So getting right into it, we are in Black History Reader, and we're looking at question 2 today. Question 2 is, are Black Americans an official socioeconomic underclass? And we'll piece through the information, hopefully get you to think. Hopefully I won't give an answer. I don't want to bias you, but let's just get into it. Let's define underclass. In the book, the definition is an underclass is that segment of the population that occupies the lowest possible position and ranking order of social acceptability. Notice he didn't say white, black, anything, Chinese. He didn't give a race. He just gave it. Segment of the population occupying the lowest possible position in ranking order of social acceptability. Now, having said that, the piece, he goes on to say the U.S. Constitution, since I've interacted with this material, I find the documents upon which this nation rests are very biased and questionable towards Black success, Black achievement, Black elevation, progress, freedom of movement in America. The documents that undergird this nation, that define how this nation operates, those documents don't support Blackness. Those documents are, I find them to be very hostile. I find laws that were written hundreds of years ago that are never overturned concerning Blacks. Now here's my illustration. We find in the Constitution a lot of that language. We got a whole year to tease it out, but if you've been following along in the series, you remember we did a 7-day kind of survey of some of the Black codes and laws from the early 1600s on into the late 1800s, divided between North and South and all that. You probably remember that. And one of those laws was the 1790 first Naturalization Law. And that was the law that said that America shall be a white nation. And that's a pretty big one, you know, because I'm Black, so am I a part of this nation? Well, there's 3/5 of a human being and stuff like that. I was born here, so we have some laws to protect Blackness, but explicitly it's been written into law that America's a white nation. So the consequence of that is those who are not white are marginalized and all this. And this is 1790, so you're talking slavery, still an issue, Blackness, and things like that. In that whole study of laws, every law was created, I'm going to say, if the intention was to further marginalize Black folks. Whether that was the intention or not, it was the result. Okay, so there's the Constitution itself and the Naturalization Law in 1790 that says America should be a white nation. So that the result of that is that Blacks had became designated official underclass. See, it's the absence of explicit speech directed at Blacks in some portions of laws and the Constitution that that exposes the Blackness. By not mentioning Black by names like Dr. Anderson. One of the things that really touched me when I first started listening to Dr. Anderson is he likes this term, broad and ambiguous terms. There is where you will find Black people. That's how Blackness, Black people are expressed in the Constitution. So it's very, look for that when they're talking about broad, talking in broad and ambiguous terms about portions of the population. It's about Black folks. It's about marginalized Black folks who don't have access, full rights to wealth and resources of this rich nation. So we're designated an underclass through that action of that naturalization law. So we'll go into the definition was even heightened that as far as the interaction of immigration on in the United States, you think about like Ellis Island and how just boatloads of Europeans were coming in and usurping black jobs, black positions, and things like that. So with these immigration policies, you know, blacks were never invited or explicitly written in to the language to participate. But these immigration groups were classified as a minority along with blacks. So even though blacks were already here, then they had to compete with this wave upon wave of immigrants that are also considered minorities coming in to the nation. So those immigrants were granted benefits and such. And we talk a lot about how immigrants come in, plant themselves in a community, start taking wealth and resources, usually from blacks, and then that community grows. Blacks get displaced and are just marginalized just to being a consumer class in this nation through that activity. So what's interesting to note, we're moving the subject to income, that, you know, we talk so much, there's so much hype around the civil rights movement, social integration and things like that. And at the height, 1967, generally at the height of a civil rights movement, white income was still double that of blacks. We were starting to get handed a lot of symbols, lip service, you know, cessation of some types of oppression. We're breaking up Jim Crow laws and things like that, but we're still not having access to what we need to compete in the wealthiest nation on earth, right? We're still, you know, it's the height of the civil rights movement. You think doors are opening, access to jobs, things like that. You know, all they said was like, you can't explicitly discriminate, you know, but we can't prove a mental attitude or a mental condition towards a group of people. That's the problem with the law. You can't legislate the heart of man. You can't tell, you know, you can't go to court and win a battle about discrimination or something like that unless you have someone explicitly, unashamedly saying that they prevented this person based on their color, sex, height, age, weight, things like that. It's like, it's ridiculous to, you know, we don't have, the world would be so much different if we had a monitor screen right here about exactly what we thought at all times, that we'd get rid of the whole legal system. We'd know motives right down to their very nature, but we don't have access to that information. That's not how the law is configured anyway. We can't assume a person's thoughts. So these civil rights, you know, I always picture, you know, as I broach this information and articulate it, I picture the white legislature and politics and all that saying, you know, we don't really have to give them anything. We could just say whatever they need. You know, escort a few blacks into white schools, and there were some gestures, but you know, they didn't give us anything. And still, hear my language, give us, like they have, and we're waiting for them to give us. Okay, I won't go too far into that. But anyway, at the height of the civil rights movement, still black incomes half that of whites. Okay, so that's a problem. So we got the problem of income, which has always has been a problem with the black dollar is different from the white dollar, and then buying power and things like that. And immigration laws, because the immigrant is defined as a minority, they come and compete with black groups, and here's another thing. Now, here's a problem as far as blacks go, is that we're not as organized and deliberate and things like that. So we've got our own house cleaning to do, and every once in a while flip flop around blame and things like that. So that's a big issue. Also interesting to note, he writes in that chapter that in the nation's capital, capital. Remember, I talked about that we moved the nation's capital, and the nation's capital was the center of slave trade, right? So you have this dynamic going on all the way back from the 1600s, or whenever the capital was moved from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. But you find the net worth of whites 81 times higher than that of blacks. And, you do some simple math about assets and liabilities and things like that, and you find it just the margin is so much closer for blacks, when it's just wide open, a lot of elbow room and shoulder room for whites in America down in the nation's capital. All right. Let's see, what was I thinking of here, though? I had a thought. Oh, I had a good thought there, but I missed it. I do want to make a correction to some of my rhetoric here, and I usually talk about income levels, positions of races in America, and I base that on the income power of groups in the United States. But now, as I'm referencing Dr. Anderson's work again, it's the Asians, whites, Hispanics, blacks, always on the bottom. So that's let's keep that in mind. How the Asians are just strong. They're probably stronger, maybe the strongest, in their unity and their loyalty, national intentions towards one another. Now, there's some issues about blame. We get blamed for our position, but remember, we were enchained. That's where I was going. The blame, and we were chained, enslaved, whipped, beaten, told who to sleep with, when to sleep with them, disrupted, mental, physical abuse. It's winter now, and we've got kind of this cold spell coming through. It's expected, but think about a person growing up in a warm climate all their lives and have to experience the first winter in America. It's like, whoa, Jack, I was not prepared for that. Sicknesses, exposure to new diseases, things like that happened to these groups. So, we blacks get blamed for their position. I'm going to say there's a degree of truth and validity to that. If we're going to allow drug sales in our community, kill each other off, and expose ourselves to legal and retribution through incarceration, things like that, then we do bear that. Now, I'm not I'm not divorcing or giving any validity or passing over Jim Crow or some of the intentional laws, semi-slavery, finding a black person vagrant or something like that. I remember I was watching the movie Convoy, and in the first opening couple scenes, the black trucker is he's racing along, moving down the highway, and it was what's called a train back in the 70s. I guess they don't do that anymore. It's very dangerous to do that. But he's moving down the highway. The sheriff pulls him over. The sheriff shakes him down, takes their cash to keep them from impounding the truck and the white sheriff and things like that. And so now the black guy's got no cash. So he pulls into the nearest truck stop. He's just trying to get a little bit to eat. And here comes the sheriff rolling. And again, now the sheriff catches the black man without cash. He's going to take him in for vagrancy. Very, very evil and cruel system. So I'm not talking about that. That's not black folks' fault. Being locked up for slavery. I'm talking, the Jim Crow laws and the black codes and things like that, where blacks would get these enormous jail terms and all that. And it was just to keep them sequestered somewhere, especially the men, and keep them on chain gangs to build roads, buildings, clear land, and things like that. Very sad, very disturbing, and it's an intentional attack, right? But now in today's world, where I don't have much sympathy if a black person's going to put themselves in that position. I've been busted for drugs. I've been pulled over and stuff. I've exposed myself to that kind of to those kind of legalities, of my own fault. So, drug use and selling and stuff. I don't have any compassion for that if a person's going to expose themselves to that. But when law enforcement comes looking for stuff, then that's not right either. Now, also, we looked at, as far as blame, these white codes, this barrage of white laws, and that's only the study we did, that 1 week study we did together, is only the tip of the iceberg. We just skimmed over the top through a lot of things. I'm sure a lot of unwritten codes, unwritten laws, and things like that. And then you put in there this terrorism of lynching, the terrorism of rape, terrorized with crop burnings, poisoning animals, sacking communities, things like that. So the resilience of blacks in this country is actually quite impressive when it comes down to it. I would like to think that if I ever got in position, like some of the black, what Dr. Anderson would call the overclass, those blacks who have kind of made it, I would like to think that I'd want to participate more, that I'd want to really get my hands dirty in the community. Right now, I just don't have the resources or time to get out there like I'd like to. And I'm talking about more than creating scholarships and throwing money at things. I'm talking about mentorship. I'm talking about opportunities to really be a person open. I'd like to be in contact. I'd like to see more shared resources, But we have a system now, and then the system We have those that don't make much and those that make a lot. I think that we could do a better system. There could be a better dispersal of resources. Now, white folks have come in to this nation all around the world. Actually, stronger nations have come in, suck out as much resources when they think the resources are depleted or down to a level, down to a bare minimum level. Then they all of a sudden they have ideas of freedom, and there's loosening of sanctions and restrictions against oppressed peoples of the land. They don't fool Dr. Anderson. They don't fool me. I'm sure they don't fool you as well. You know, he notes, I think it's pretty sure it's him, South Africa, right? These super minority white population, you know, after they've are sure that they've got the resources tied up and under control, now they're letting blacks participate in all this stuff. That's just not right. I don't feel, and I don't feel it's necessary. You know, what does one do with billions and billions of dollars? You know, what a person that can spend thousands of dollars on themselves a day and never run out of money, and I just don't think that's right. That doesn't make any sense to me. I, I I'm all for having a cushion in life, but give me a break. I don't know, man. Some of that's ridiculous. And I admire the men like Dale Carnegie and some other of these massive, um, massively wealthy people that say, you know what, let's disperse this. I'm through. Like, especially when they die, they're like, I'm through with this. I'm moving on. So let's let the world have this and participate. And of course, the people managing their funds and all that aren't too excited about that. You know, they make trust and they're managing the trust and they're benefiting from that. But you know, I don't know if Dale Carnegie's ultimate wishes are followed. He's dead now, so you know, him like him. So but that's another discussion. I digress. But you know, when I talk about distributing resources, and I'm sure if I was like on national television with some opponents there, the first thing they say is socialism, communism, social collapse. Right now, the world has its eyes on Venezuela and the changes going on there. How Russia is piling up. Like, Russia's always on the opposite side of the United States, right? That's, you know, whether it doesn't matter what right or wrong, the moral flavor. It's just, well, when it comes to these countries, there's Russia right there, which is amazing, you know. But I'm not Russian. I'm not Putin. I didn't come up with Vladimir Putin's ideas. You know, he thinks it's right to support Syria and a nation that gases, chemically exposes its own people. He thinks it's right for Venezuela to have a financial collapse and people running out of there, heading north in caravans, now they call it. All right? But that's the picture my opponents would have when I talk about distributing resources equally and things like that. You know, blacks in America being an underclass is it's an issue, and it's a prevailing issue, and we need a lot of things that you're going to hear over and over for a year. You got to keep hearing it, because you got to keep hearing it until you hear it. That's when you stop hearing it. Um, so our underclass status is real. And I think that's real no matter, you look at some of our great highlighted blacks of the 21st century, Steve Harvey, Shaquille O'Neal, uh, I would put Patti LaBelle in there because I like her sweet potato pie and cobblers. Oh, the plenty of athletes and things like that. You know, I would even still say they're an underclass because when push comes to shove, Queen Latifah, LL Cool J, and people like that, still an underclass. Black, you can't get around it. Even those millionaires and billionaire people, caliber people, are still not necessarily participating. So, I mean, think about how much um, resources. I wonder if they've ever done a comparison to their white counterparts or Asian, Hispanic counterparts, and do their black dollars have the same motion and power as Asians, whites, Hispanics, Arabs? I wonder if that study's ever been done. Do they have to be making that much more times money being black to participate? Uh, you know, so that's that piece today. So today, blacks as an underclass, thinking about that, really fleshing that out. Do your research about that and give back to me. Please hit the like buttons and subscribe buttons and all that stuff to update socially and all that. I'm Tomlin's Nyback. This has been 365 Days Towards Racial Change. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.